if you recall our last class, we were discussing about orthogonal coordinate systems. Now, I said that today I will discuss what is called a generalized orthogonal curvilinear coordinate system. Now, there are two terms here. One is orthogonal, the other is curvilinear. Now, curvilinear is coming because here the constant coordinate surfaces which we talked about, they could be all curves. It need not be, it is not necessary that there has to be a plane. It could be a curved plane. And of course, there is that orthogonal property which we already discussed has to be followed. Okay, now let us move into it. What we are saying is that consider that f x y z is equal to u is a function of three independent space variables x, y, z. We can always assume that. Of course, here we are considering x, y, z means in the Cartesian coordinate system. And we are saying that a surface is characterized by the constant parameter u. That means if u is constant, I will get a surface. So therefore, putting this constant parameter u differently, that means here equation 3.22, u1, u2 and u3, these three constants, we are saying that then we have three surfaces. And we are saying that considering these surfaces are orthogonal, then we are saying that they intersect only at one point. If that is the case, then that any point in the space, particularly which is the intersection of the three constant coordinate surfaces, can be defined by the coordinate u1, u2, u3. Then this will be called the orthogonal curvilinear coordinates of a point. And how will it look like? It is something like this, where you can see that x, y, and z. This is just typically Cartesian. But now we are saying that now I have three functions. One is u1 is equal to constant here. And if that is the case, then I am having a surface, curved surface. Then u2 is equal to constant. Once again, I am having a curved surface. And then u3 is equal to constant. Again, I am having a curved surface. And intersection of any two surfaces will give rise to a curved line, and therefore we will have three curved lines which are called the coordinate axis. One I will say u1 axis, the other will be u2, and last one will be u3 axis. So these three will be the axis lines, and they are orthogonal to each other at this point of intersection. And this point P is therefore, the coordinate of this point P is therefore defined by the coordinate u1, u2, u3. These are the constant coordinate surfaces. Quite obviously, we have to define the unit vectors. So, as shown in the figure, the unit vectors are normal to the constant coordinate surfaces. That means A1, here A1 will be normal to the constant coordinate surface, that is u1 is equal to constant, and it will be, this u1, previously if you remember that say k vector, what was k vector? It is normal to a plane which is z is equal to constant, and k vector is normal to that plane. So it is same concept, that u1 is equal to constant, then a1 vector is normal to that, but there are two directions of the normal. We will take it in the increasing direction of the coordinate u1, and in the same way we will take a2 and we'll take a3, which are normal to u2 is equal to constant and a3 normal to u3 is equal to constant, and they will follow the right-handed cross product rule. That means a1 cross a2 will be equal to a3, and they will also follow the dot product rule. That means a1 dot a2 will be 0, a2 dot a3 will be 0, and obviously a1 dot a1 will be 1. So these are the all product rules these unit vectors will follow. Now we are going into the concept of that length, which we have already discussed. So now I am considering 2 points, P1 and P2. Now how we move from P1 to P2? Of course, one is straight, directly from P1 to P2. That is the physical distance, which we are saying the vector dl. But this have 3 components. First, there will be one component which will be in the direction of u1. That means here it is shown dl1. Now dl1, which we have already defined, that this is related to the incremental change in coordinate, that is du1 by s factor h1, which we defined earlier in our last class as the metric coefficient in the coordinate one direction. Similarly, so this is that first part here. Then the second part is dl2, which is in the direction of u2, again related to the incremental change in coordinate du2 by the metric coefficient h2. And the last one is, of course, dl3, which is du3 multiplied by h3. So this is how. So you see from P1, first in the direction is dl1, then as it is shown here is dl3, then dl2, so we get dl. So therefore, equation 3.25, dl vector has 3 components, dl1 with a1, dl2 with a2, dl3 with a3. What is dl1? h1 du1. What is dl2? h2 du2. And dl3 is h3 du3. So this is quite straightforward. And therefore, if we take the area vector dA12, so dA12 means it is the area formed by dl1 into dl2. So that means this dl1, this one, and dl2, this one. So this is the area, that is dl1 into dl2. So naturally this area vector will be normal to this plane, that is u1 u2 plane. So this will be the 2 length components, that is dl1. Here you can see dl1 into dl2, that is h1 du1 into h2 du2. This is dl1, this is dl2. Then the unit vector a3, because a3 is normal to the plane which is du1 du2 plane. Similarly, then other 2 areas vectors, one will be of course the du2 du3, the other will be du3 du1. So we can define the 3 area vectors, equation 3.26. Volume is much simpler. It is simply dl1 into dl2 into dl3. So here you can see it is, this is that one. So dl1 into dl2 into dl3, equation 3.27. So if we write a table where you can see the columns are, the first one is orthogonal coordinate system, then second column is coordinates, third column unit vectors, fourth column metric coefficients. So first let us take generalized one. We said the coordinates will be u1, u2, u3. Unit vectors will be A1, A2, A3. Metric coefficients will be H1, H2, H3. If we take Cartesian now, a very specific example, then coordinates are x, y, z. Unit vectors are I, j, k. Metric coefficient 1, 1, 1. We have already discussed that. Then if we take cylindrical, then coordinates are r, theta, z. Unit vectors are u, r, u, theta, u, z. Metric coefficients 1, r, 1. Then finally, the spherical coordinate system, coordinates are r, theta, phi. Unit vectors are u, r, u, theta, u, phi. Metric coefficients 1, r, r sine theta. Now, table 3.1 here clearly shows the dependence of the metric coefficients on the respective coordinates. This I have already explained, but please remember this is a very important property. Only in Cartesian, the metric coefficients are constant, not dependent on any coordinate of that particular system. This is the only unique coordinate system, and as a result, this is also the simplest coordinate system. Now I move on to the vector operations. Can we write the vector operators in terms of the generalized coordinates instead of just x, y, z? Well, let us look at this in this way, that what we are saying is that in this field analysis, we have vector quantities as well as we have the scalar quantities. And both these functions are the scalar and vector functions of position. That means as you vary the location, the functions change. For example, electric potential is a scalar. It varies with location. Electric field intensity is a vector. It varies with location. Now, what are the most commonly used vector operations in field theory? The most common are gradient, then divergence, then curl, and the Laplacian. Out of these four, we have already discussed gradient, divergence, and Laplacian. What we have not discussed is curl. Well, let us go ahead and see how we can do that. Now, what we are saying is that let us consider an arbitrary scalar field varying with location. That is, u is that scalar field. It is a function of the location, so it is function of u1, u2, u3. Please remember, now we are working on the basis of generalized coordinates, not any specific coordinates. Now, this scalar field can be electric potential, this scalar field can be temperature, and so on. And we consider an arbitrary vector field, which is this one by equation 3.28. Since it is a vector field, it will have three components. So S is the vector field. So we are saying the components are S1, S2, and S3 along with the three unit vectors. Let us now look into gradient closely. Particularly say electric field. A common application is that we take the gradient operation, whereby electric field intensity is obtained from electric potential. Now, in order to understand the concept clearly, we have to do this. That means a change in du in the scalar function u, let's say it is potential, is expressed in terms of the changes in the differential distances. Remember, this is distances, not the coordinates. dl1, dl2, dl3. Gradient is always in terms of distance, not in terms of coordinates. This confusion comes only because of the Cartesian, where the distance and the coordinate changes are same. That means differential change in coordinate and differential change in distance is same in Cartesian. That's why all confusion comes. So please remember, gradient is always in terms of the differential distances, not in terms of differential coordinate change. So how do we write it? So we write that du, which is the differential change in the scalar function. It will be the first order derivative into the dl1, first order derivative into dl2, first order derivative into dl3. This is quite standard representation in terms of the first order derivative. What we are doing is that now we are saying that dl vector has three components, as we have already discussed. So what we are doing, that equation 3.29, here there is no vector operation. This is just plain and simple getting a differential change with the help of the first order derivative of that scalar function. That's all. But now just see, can we write equation 3.30 from equation 3.29 incorporating the vector? Can we write it? That is the main question. So you can see that if we write it in this way with a dot product, then basically you are getting 3.29, right? If you look at equation 3.30, here see the two parentheses. Now first one is a vector operator. Second one is the differential distance vector. Then if you take the dot product, you get the differential, that scalar function. So du becomes this. So what is this? Then du becomes that del of u, this is the first one, the first vector, right? This is del of u dot dl. Or you can also say that del of u is the gradient. So it becomes du dl. That is the first order derivative in terms of distance. So then what is del of u? Del of u. Remember, this is the gradient of potential, del of u in equation 3.30. And this is the first parenthesis. And here is your first parenthesis, equation 3.31, the first quantity within the parenthesis. So we are writing it in this form. Then del L1 is expanded in terms of H1 and U1. So it is written in this form. So equation 3.31, this is the gradient function in terms of general coordinate system. Now if you see, look at equation 3.31, and I am saying now I have the Cartesian system. You know that then u1, u2, u3 will become xyz, a1, a2, a3 will become ijk, and h1, h2, h3 become 1, 1, 1. Put it in this equation 3.31. You will get equation 3.32, which is exactly what we have derived earlier. So you can see that instead of writing all different equations, if we write only equation 3.31, I can get it directly. If it is cylindrical coordinate system, you know u1, u2, u3 will be r theta z, a1, a2, a3 will be ur, u theta, uz, h1, h2, h3 will be 1, r1. You put it, you get equation 3.33. Now you see, we have got the gradient function in cylindrical coordinate system. In spherical coordinate system, u1, u2, u3 is r theta phi, a1, a2, a3 is ur, u theta, u phi, h1, h2, h3, you know, 1 r sine theta. Put it there, you get equation 3.34. Now you tell me, this is the beauty of the mathematics. So if I have to, memorize all these equations separately, I can't do that. In fact, nobody can do that. Secondly, if I have to write a program, if I have to write all the equations separately for the coordinate system, this is next to impossible. So what we always do is we write only one equation, that is equation 3.31. Then in the front end of the software, you are given an option that choose your coordinate system. You choose cylindrical. Immediately I just put the appropriate values and the relevant equation is developed in the back end of the software. This is exactly how all these modern softwares work. Coming to del operator, because this is a vector operator, del operator here, go back here, you can see here the del operator. This first one, del L1 A1, del L2 A2, del L3 A3. This is equation 3.30, the first quantity within the parenthesis. This is the del operator. So we are saying here that grad of u is this. This we have already developed. And then we are putting it within the parenthesis. Then within the parenthesis, this term becomes the del operator. So therefore, if you say what is the del operator, then typically I have seen the answer is if people say del del x, del del y, del del z, like that. But yes, that is correct only partially, because that is only for the Cartesian. Now, if I write equation 3.35, I can give it for any coordinate system. If you ask me for spherical coordinate system, I'll simply replace h1, h2, h3 and the unit vectors, and u1, u2, u3, I will get the del operator. So you see the beauty, that's what I am trying to highlight on you, see the beauty. Come the derivation of divergence, already we have done it in the derivation of the Gauss's differential Gauss's law, differential form of Gauss's law. So we'll do the same thing here. In that previous derivation, we have taken a rectangular parallelepiped, but here we will take a purely orthogonal curvilinear parallelepiped. So here you can see A, B, C, D, and E, F, G, H. This is the entire parallelepiped. What we are saying is that let us say that the value of a vector field, let's say it's the flux density, is known at the middle of the parallelepiped, which is the point O. So I repeat, the value of the vector field, let's say it is electric flux density, is known at the middle of the parallelepiped. Now, the question is, from that value, can I know the value of the vector field, let's say flux density, on the surface? For example, if I take it in the direction of u1, then I have a point 1 on the surface ABCD, then I have a point 2 on the surface EFGH. From the knowledge of the vector field at the point O, can I get the value of the vector field at point 1 and point 2? The answer is yes. How? We apply the Taylor series. Now, Taylor series, I don't know whether you have gone through the Taylor series in mathematics. So have you gone through Taylor series?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me exactly what is Taylor series? What does it do? I mean, what is
It
it?
finds the value. It actually generalizes each and every function with
It gives
there-
fundamental and harmonics of a
No.
function.
That's a more of a. Who was the first person talking? What you were saying?
so it actually generalizes each and every functions with
Yes.
its derivatives along with its coefficients. Means, we can
Uh,
actually generalize each and every function with that.
Generalize. So you are highlighting on generalize. Okay. I am giving you a much, simpler view to it. Let me see whether I have that or not. Where is it? I'm trying to find out to show you. Actually, this is the problem, that we are not knowing exactly what it, how it is implemented in our cases. See, I am stopping sharing of your previous file. I am going into sharing of a new file. I hope it is coming on your screen. Is it coming a new file? Equation 14.1?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good. Now just look. Equation 14.1 is Taylor series, written in terms of Cartesian. Right. Now, if you look into this Taylor series, see, I am not going to tell you about lot about what is that called, lot about first order derivative, second order. What I am trying to highlight is, look at that equation. What you find interesting is that on the left hand side, it's a function of x plus a, y plus b, z plus c. On the right hand side, it's a function of x, y, z. Is it not? If that is the case, now I have a question. See, x, y, z, a given set of x, y, z. That means I give you a set of value of x, y, z. What does it mean to you? This is a very simple question. A fixed set of value of x, y, z I am giving to you. What does it mean to you? This you have to give me some answer. You cannot remain silent. You have all done so many mathematics.
Some input.
No. See, just think about the discussion. What is x, y, z we were discussing? These were all
Coordinates.
coordinates, but not just, what is that for a, you are giving a given set of value of x, y, z. So therefore, what you get? So you are giving 3 coordinates. So what you get? It's a point in the space.
Oh, yes.
Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So you are getting a particular point, one particular point, whose values are x, y, z. If that is the case, then what is x plus a, y plus b, z plus c? ABC constant. What does it mean? It's another point, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And the second point is displaced from the first point by A, B, and C in the x, y, and z direction. That's it. That's what it means, isn't it? So therefore, what is it meaning? See, f x, y, z, that means some function at the point P, say any point P, which is defined by x, y, z. Then left hand side is, it is that same function, but at a point Q, defined by these coordinates. So I have 2 points, point P defined by x, y, z. You have a point Q defined by this x plus a, y plus b, z plus c. And that Taylor series says that if you know the value of that function at the point P, you can compute the value in the point P, Q using this series. Of course, certain mathematical conditions are there. This is what the Taylor series says. So you have to always understand that how we apply it in our field. That means, particularly for us engineers, it is very important. That means, see, everything I cannot measure. So if I measure a value at one particular point, I can compute it at a neighboring point using Taylor series. And therefore, if you forget about the higher order derivative here, just look at 14.1. It will be very useful. If you just take the first order derivative, then what is it? A means what is the distance between the 2 points in the x direction? Then in first order derivative. B, what is the distance in the y direction, then first order derivative, then C, and first order derivative in the three coordinates, that is del del x, del del y, del del z. Forget about the second order derivative. Just if you look this, I am now going to apply exactly this in our derivation. I am saying that at the middle of the parallelepiped, the point O function is known. That means now this is becoming fxyz in our derivation, where the point O is defined by xyz, but we will not say xyz, we will say generalized coordinate. And then we will say that at the other point, let's say 1 or 2, I will show you that diagram. We will find out what is the distance in the three coordinates, and then we will take the first order derivative and we will correlate the two values. That's exactly what we are going to do. This is how we apply the Taylor series without going into any big conditions and others. So now I again go back to our derivation. Where is it? Here. So hopefully now again it will come. Okay, is it coming?
Yes.
Good. Now just consider our discussion. Look at point 0. If it is xyz, now just think about xyz, forget about u1, and think about the point 2. This is x plus a, y plus b, z plus c. Can you tell me what is the value of ABC? Take point O and point 2, and they are in the u1 direction. O1, 0, 2 are in the u1 direction, all three. What will be ABC between point O and point 2? Because that will be needed for Taylor series. What is the distance? ABC in the Taylor series. Since they are in all u1 direction, naturally B and C will be 0 because that coordinate is not varying. Only A, which is in the u1 direction, will vary. What is that? Now see, between A and E, that is h1 into du1, that means dl1. So between O, which is the midpoint, O and 2, it must be half of that. And 2 is in the increasing direction of the coordinate. So I will say it is plus dl1 by 2. If I take now point 1, it is in the decreasing direction of u1. So I will say it is minus dl1 by 2. What I am writing here, you see, just think of it, that S1 because it is the component in the u1 direction. S1 minus del S1 del L1 into dl1 by 2. It is just that A, that distance A is minus dl1 by 2 multiplied by the first order derivative. This is between point 1 and 2, 0 and 1. This is in the negative direction, or rather decreasing direction of u1. And 0 and 2, here, second one. Here the distance is plus dl1 by 2. So you get this. That means S1 is the value known at the point O. It is fxyz. So now, therefore, what we are doing is dl1 we are expanding, and then del L1 we are expanding as h1 into del u1, h1 into du1. Now since h1 is coming and they are same cancels, you get this equation, and then S1 at the point 2, you get this equation. The area of the surface ABCD, this is dl2, that means h2 du2, then h3 du3. This is the area. Then what is the flux going in? That is flux density, that is S1 component, where at the point 1, that means value of S1 at the point 1. In our previous discussion, we said this is dx into area. But now we are saying not dx, it is S1, that is the component in the U1 direction, multiplied by this area at the point 1. This is flux going in. Flux going out, the value of S1 at the point 2, multiplied by same area, dl2 into dl3. So it comes here. See, here, that S1 into area minus del of S1 into area. This is the flux which is going into the volume. It is in the area ABCD. Then flux going out. This is considering, here. The other side, that is point 2, it is area EFGH. So one is ABCD here, flux going in. We are considering the value of flux at the point 1 into the area, and flux going out is the value of that vector at T into the area. So then we will take the difference. So once we get this, see here, equation 3.6 is the difference. And if we take the difference, if you look at it, then this S1 into this will cancel each other. And then there is a term minus and plus. So if you take the difference, they become plus. So this du1 du2 du3 by 2 becomes simply du1 du2 du3. So you get this equation. This is for the U1 direction. What happens in the U2 direction? I can write it from here. It will become S2 into H3 into H1. Just apply the cyclic order. Then it in the U3 direction, it will be S3 into H1 H2. So that's the net flux coming out of that curvilinear differential, very small parallelepiped. So add this, you get equation 3.37. This is the net flux coming out of the volume. And what is divergence? We already said divergence is the net flux per unit volume. So divide it by volume, that is dl1, dl2, dl3. Here, equation, this one, here. Then you expand dl1, dl2, dl3. How? Sorry. So, very difficult. Anyway, here you can see H1, H2, H3. If you can see my mouse, then you will see that du1, du2, du3 will cancel and you will get 3.38. This is exactly the divergence equation. And here you see this is following a very clearly cyclic order. That means del del u1 of H2 H3 S1, del del u2 of H3 H1 S2, del del u3 of H1 H2 S3, then divided by H1 H2 S3. If you see that, and again come back to our earlier discussion of Cartesian, that H1 H2 S3 is 1, then S1 is, let's say it is dx or sx, whatever you say, and u1 u2 u3 is xyz. So we get equation 3.39, that is divergence of S is del sx del x plus del sy del y plus del sz dz. This is exactly what we got from as the differential form of Gauss's law in Cartesian. Now if we look at equation 3.38, we don't require any derivation in any coordinate. We just use this equation 3.38, put the appropriate value of the metric coefficient, and that's it. And you see the importance of the metric coefficients, that how they are coming into each and every equation. If you say cylindrical coordinate system here, equation 3.40 coming from 3.38. Again, it is putting r theta z, then the three components of the vector field S are SR, S theta, S z. So I get equation 3.40. If you say it is spherical coordinate, then h1, h2, h3, 1 r sine theta, put it here, you get equation 3.41. Once again, you see that if I just remember one equation, that is equation 3.38, I can write the any vector equation, that is divergence equation for any coordinate system. Although these equations are very, looking very complicated, but if you really go through it, and I request you to go through it, because as an electrical engineer, if you have this solid foundation, that will be so helpful for you in whatever field you go later on, doesn't matter. Even in software, one of my student after graduation joined the company, the MathWorks. MathWorks is the company which developed MATLAB, and he was put into the development team. So now you can just think of it, that the MATLAB that we are using is written by somebody who was just a student like you. In my lab, he worked with me here. So if the foundations are strong, you can do anything. What is Laplacian? Laplacian, we do it in this way, that let's say the vector field is S, which is grad of u. So grad of u, we have already developed that 1 by h1 del u1, etc. Then S will have three components, S1, A1, S2, A2, S3, A3. So then what is S1? S1 is 1 by h1 del u1. What is S2? 1 by h2 del u3 is this one. Then what is S3? 1 by S3 del u3. Then we are saying that Laplacian, which is del square u, this can be written as del dot del. Del dot del is del square. So del dot del u. Now what is del u? Del u is S from the first one here. So it can be written as del dot S. So del square u is del dot S. Now already we have this expression for the divergence, right? So we put it here. Then what we put is, instead of S1, because we want to write it in terms of u, that is the scalar function, then we substitute this one everywhere. S1, S2, S3 in equation 3.42, you substitute this, and then what you arrive at is this one. Now you see that is the Laplacian. And if you look at that, although it is very big, but if you put h1, h2, h3 is equal to 1, immediately you will find that it will become del square u del x square, del square u del y square, del square u del z square, which is the Laplacian in Cartesian. Put it in r theta z, h1, h2, h3 as 1 r1, you get the Laplacian in the Cartesian coordinate system, equation 3.44. Spherical coordinate system, again put r theta phi, put the metric coefficients 1 r sine theta, you get equation 3.45 from equation 3.42. So you can see for every operator, that means whether it is a del operator, whether it is a Laplacian del square operator, whether it is a gradient, whether it is a divergence, everything will just have one equation in terms of the generalized coefficients and the metric coefficient, generalized coordinates and its metric coefficients, and for any specific coordinate system, we'll simply put the values. That's how we actually work. In fact, if you later on work in space science, you will see that there you will work really in the generalized coordinate system, because in those cases, the our well-known standard coordinate systems, many times it doesn't give you the required accuracy. Now this curl I have not discussed earlier, so now I will discuss curl of a vector. Now how we do it? What is the curl? First, the definition. The curl is evaluated as the closed line integral per unit area. So just compare it with the divergence definition. What is divergence? It is the net flux per unit volume. Here it is the closed line integral of a vector. That means you integrate a vector in a line integral per unit area. And sometimes in some book, the closed line integral is also known as the circulation of a vector. I mean, it is just a name. Now, let us see how we do. But first of all, when we take the vector and if we integrate along a line, and then since there are three planes which are normal to the three components of a vector, hence the circulation of a vector is to be computed separately for these three planes. Again, I repeat, since there are three planes which are normal to the three components of a vector, hence the circulation, that means the curl of a vector, has to be computed separately for these three planes. And each of these components will give one component of the curl. So therefore, what does it mean? It means that curl of a vector will give rise to another vector. Because vector has three components, we will take the circulation, that means the line integral in three different planes, and this will give, each one will give one component of the curl, so it gives rise to another vector. So divergence of a vector doesn't give rise to a vector, it gives rise to a scalar, whereas curl of a vector gives rise to another vector. So how we are going to do it? So let us do it. That let's say look at the figure here. Right. So I have three components of S, S1, S2, S3 again. And again we are saying that these are known at the midpoint O of the differential area. Now we are talking about the area. And in this case, what we are taking is the area in the U1, U2 plane. So it is A, B, C, D, A. This area, A, B, C, D, A. This is an area in the U1, U2 plane. So again, we are saying that, let's say that the vector field is known at the midpoint O. Then applying Taylor series, we'll find out what are these values in the midpoint of AD, what is the value midpoint of BC, then CD and AB. Just same concept what we have done. So first let us take the differential path length AB. So here you can see AB. If I know this value at O, then the midpoint of AB is along the U2 direction and in the decreasing direction of U2. So this distance is dl2 by 2. So you can see here at the bottom minus dl2 by 2. So we are taking the derivative of S1 because we are integrating S1 here, because this plane is U2 U3 plane, sorry, U1 U2 plane, and we are taking now S1 because why? Because S1 is along U1 direction, so AB, the line AB is along S1. S2 and S3 will be orthogonal to line AB. So you cannot multiply that with this length. If you take a dot product, it will be 0. So we are taking only the S1. So S1 minus del S1 del L2 dl2 by 2. So please remember this is del S1 del L2 because this is O to the midpoint of AB. This is along U2 direction, this dotted line. Similarly, the midpoint of CD. Okay, before that, the equation 3.46 is the integral from A to B. What is that? S into dl. So this is that S. You multiply it, and that's what you get. So simply this is multiplied by d S1 is multiplied by dl1. Since this is a very small length, we are considering that it will remain constant. That means midpoint value will remain constant. So we are simply multiplying it by dl1. What is dl1? Is this one. So this midpoint value multiplied by this length is the integral. That is what we are considering. So you are multiplying whatever is there, S1 here, this one, this whole thing is multiplied by dl1. So S1 is multiplied by dl1. Here you see equation 3.46. And then here also it is multiplied by dl1. So we get this. What happened on the line CD? From the midpoint O, it is along U2 direction, and it is also half of the length, that is dl2. This is dl2 here, h2 du2. So dl2 by 2 in the increasing direction, so it is plus. And we are integrating along line CD, so we will take the S1 component at this midpoint. So it becomes here S1 plus del S1 del L2 into this. This comes from the Taylor series. That this dl2 by 2 is the distance A multiplied by the first order derivative. And first order derivative in which direction? This distance is in the U2 direction, so first order derivative is in the L2. Then again, if we integrate C into D, but remember that when we are going for circulation, we have to take the direction A to B, because we are going from A, B, C, D, A to B is moving in the positive direction of U1. So that will take as positive, but C to D is going from the decreasing direction of U1. So we'll take it as negative. So you can see here this integral, that DL, that means the distance from C to D is DL1, but this DL1 is minus DL1. So here you see that this integral here the multiplication is by minus DL1. That S1 is multiplied by minus DL1. Here also it is multiplied by minus DL1. So you get 3.47. If I now go to the B line BC, here we will integrate the U2 component, that means S2. But we have to find out the value of the vector field at the midpoint of BC. That we will get from the value of O. So O to the midpoint of BC is actually we are traversing along U1 direction and increasing direction. So it will be a half of DL1. So DL1 by 2, but plus. Then if you take the line A to D, and we are traversing from D to A, not A to D, we will take the midpoint. Then from point O to this midpoint, it is again half of DL1, but in the decreasing direction of U1. So it will be minus DL1 by 2. So we are determining the value of S2 because from O to the midpoint of we are integrating from B to C and D to A, which are along U2 direction. So we'll take we'll multiply S2 by the distance. So first along the length BC, first we find out what is the value of the vector field, because as we said that if we know the value at O, the distance is plus TL1 by 2. So that is the distance, and we will take the first order derivative, but that will be along U1 because O to the midpoint of BC is along U1 direction. So be careful about the direction. So this is the first order derivative in terms of DL1, distance is DL1 by 2. Then you multiply it by DL2. B to C, the distance is DL2 and in the increasing direction of U2. Similarly, if you take the length DA, that means D to A, here the midpoint value we get from the value of O by Taylor series, that is minus DL1 by 2, and So you see here, so S2 you get that first order derivative in terms of dl1. Again, O to the midpoint of D to A, we are moving in the direction of U1. So first order derivative is in terms of U1, that is the length is del L1 multiplied by dl1 by 2. So first order derivative into the distance. Then we multiplied S into dl. Now this dl is equal to dl2, but it is from D to A, which is decreasing direction of U2, so it becomes minus dl2. So you can see here, it is S2 is multiplied by minus dl2. So you get equation 3.49. So what is the total circulation of the vector field along ABCD? That is along the plane U1, U2. It is summation of all these four. That means equation 3.46, which is along AB, then along BC. BC is equation 3.48. Then CD, CD is equation 3.47. Then D2A is equation 3.49. So you put sum, then you get equation 3.50. This algebra you can do, it will be not at all difficult. So this is the total circulation of the vector field in this particular plane or area. Then we divide it per unit area. That is the definition of curl. So circulation per unit area. That means closed line integral. By the way, this is a closed line integral. We are taking the integral along a line A, B, C, D, A closed line. So it is a closed line integral which is called circulation. Circulation per unit area. The area is dl1, this one, and dl2, this one. So we put this divided by dl1, dl2. So this becomes one equation 3.51 is nothing but equation 3.50 divided by this area. And you can see that becomes the one component of curl. Curl has three components. Now, which component it is? Of course, this is the component in which the area vector works. Now, ABCD is an area which is in the U1, U2 plane. So, area vector will be along U3. So, we say that this is the U3 component of the curve. So, this one is nothing but that equation 3.51 is nothing but the U3 component of the curl. That means this area is the U3 component of curl S. Now, if you ask me what is the U1 component of curl, then we have to take this integral in the U2, U3 plane. Right? Which one is this? U2, U3 plane. So, E, H, G, F. This one is the U2, U3 plane. So, you take E, F, G, H, E and again do the same sort of derivation as we have done from 3.51 and you can write which is the U1 component of curl. And you can see here again you have a very beautiful cyclic order. See here in equation 3.51 it is 1 by H1 H2. In equation that means in the U3 component it becomes 1 by H1 H2. Then it becomes del of H2 by del U1 minus del of H1 S1 by del U2. See, in the U3 component, it is all 1 and 2. This is U1 direction, so everything will be 3 and 2. So you see 1 by H2 S3, then del of equation 3.52, 1 by H2 S3, del of H3 S3 by del U2 minus del of H2 S2 by del U3. Take U2 direction, then it will be only 3, 1. So you again have equation 3.53. Here you see 1 by H3 H1 and this. And looking at the the ordering of the partial differential in the see u1 direction, equation 3.52. The partial differentials are first order derivative in 2 direction minus the first order derivative in 3 direction. Then equation 3.52 is the u2 component. Here you see the equation 3.52 was the order 2 and 3. Here it is, you see 3 and 1. First order derivative of 3 minus the first order derivative of 1. Then equation 3.51 is in the 1-2 direction. So it is first order derivative of 1 minus first order derivative of 2. So you can clearly see the beautiful cyclic order, the way it is formed. So it's not at all difficult to remember. Therefore, if we add the 3 components, which are 1, 3.52 multiplied by A1, that is the unit vector, 3.53 multiplied by A2, and 3.51 with unit vector A3. That becomes 3.54, and that is typically the Karl equation in generalized coefficient system, which is the closed line integral of a vector field along a particular surface divided by the area of that closed line integral, whatever area it is. So then I repeat, how do I get these 3 components? So for the u1 component, you take an area enclosed by 4 direction, 4 lines or whatever you say. Then take the circulation of that vector field in that area in the u2, u3 plane, divided by the area. That's it, the component. Take the u2 component, take an area in the u3, u1 plane, integrate that closed line integral. Which integral, which component you integrate? Of course, that S1, S3, because these are in the u3, u1 plane. Then third one, that is the u3 component. You take an area in the u1, u2 plane, and then take the line integral using the, of course, u1, u2, these 2 components, that is S1, S2, you get the third component. That's how we calculate curl. This is true for any curl calculation. Now this can be written in a determinant form. So this is typically equation 3.55, that instead of writing all those complicated full form, we write it in this much simpler form to remember, because the first column, you see, it is all u1. See, h1 a1, then del del u1, then h1 s1. Second column is u2, h2 a2, del del u2, h2 s2. Third column is h3 a3, del del u3, h3, and divided by 1 by h1 h2 s2. That's all. Now see, this is so simple to remember. This is del cross s, that is curl of a vector field S. Now you just put h1, h2, h3, etc. Then equation 3.56 will become curl in the Cartesian. Put again in the cylindrical coordinates, you get in the cylindrical system. Put in the spherical, you get the spherical. In that case, see, if I just remember this equation 3.56, it is so simple to remember. And if somebody asks me to remember equation 3.58, I just can't remember. It's not possible. So what I will remember is equation 3.55. This, of course, I can remember. See, this is not at all difficult. The first row is straight away h1 a1, h2 a2, h3 a3. It's so simple to remember. Second row, del del u1, del del u2, del del u3. So simple to remember. Then third one, h1 s1, h2 s2, h3 s. I can always remember that. So whenever we do in a higher level course or higher level of your, later on, do this, then you will see how mathematics benefits. Curl of an electric field, right? Now, see, if we take the closed line integral E dot dl, right? What happens? E dot dl is work done. This is quite obvious. So if I take, just look at the diagram again. See, A, B, C, D, A is a closed loop. if I take the vector field as E, that means electric field intensity, then E dot dl is work done. And if it is a closed line, what is the work done? 0. If I take EFGH, dl again 0. So therefore, what I am trying to say is that, coming back to here, if I take the closed line integral E dot dl along these three paths, which I have already shown, and these three will always give you the three components of curl, but all these three components will become 0, which means that curl of E will be 0. And this is a property which is, we always say that the electric field intensity or electric field is path independent, and it is also called irrotational. This is there are a lot of mathematics proof that E is written as minus del U. So del cross E is del cross minus del U. So you put the expression of del, you can always prove that it is 0. So equation 3.59, that means del cross E is 0. This is always used to prove that a valid electric field is conservative in nature. This is typical terminology we use. So just a simple problem is given here, that a vector field is given by this expression, x I vector, y j vector, z k vector. Prove that it is a valid field or not. That we prove, just we take the curl of E. So we put in the Cartesian coordinates is the curl of E. Now you can see that del z, del y. You cannot differentiate z with y. Similarly, del y, del z, or del x, del z. So it will all become 0. So since curl of E is coming to be 0, so therefore the given vector field is a valid electric field. So this is just one of the way of representing our electric field. So I stop here today. I think I have overloaded you, but believe me, this is something which you will not learn later on. I can guarantee you. I am sending you the note. Please study it, and if you really have a grasp on this, you will be so much benefited in your later life. You will only see later, not today. Anyway, so I know it will be very difficult for you to ask questions after this, but still, if you have any question. Any question? Okay, so now if there is no other question, so I will stop here today, and thank you for joining the class. So next class will be what if the three planes are not orthogonal? Debraj, then they are not, they don't constitute a orthogonal coordinate system. So we are not discussing that. We are discussing orthogonal coordinate system only. So if the planes are not orthogonal, they will not come into the category of orthogonal coordinate systems. Whatever we are discussing in our course only have orthogonal coordinate systems.